Hey everybody, welcome back to Real Talk, Real Leaders. I'm your host, Shauna Griffiths. And today I've talked to you guys about the value, I think, of being a really genuine person, an authentic leader. And so today, like so much the thematic for all of our guests here, we've got a good longtime friend of mine, Todd. So Chris and I met, I distinctly remember, I don't exactly know when it was, but I distinctly remember sitting across from a conference room table and just being like, I really like his vibe. And he's always stood out to me as being this like, just really genuine, authentic human and just so generous in business. So without further ado, Todd, thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, thanks for having me. I actually remember that day really well. It was in New York at the, I think it was at your offices there. And I came in to do kind of like a lunch and learn type of scenario with your team. And I just remember thinking while I was there, it's like so many times you come into those type of scenarios in like in New York, and the people that you're coming to present to can be at times a little bit rigid, a little bit kind of formal, kind of like you're just another thing on their day. And I remember you making me feel really welcome, offering to get me water, offering to do this and that. So like for me, it was like really cool. I was like, wow, like she's got an elevated title at this place, and what seemed like it would be really daunting, it was really, really easy. So you're very disarming, which is great.
Oh, great. I'm so glad. Well, so in your as I've learned actually just from doing this little bit of sleuthing to prepare for this, I actually did not even know that you, I guess early in your career, you are a professional baseball player. So from that to pharma category to then all the work that you've done in the research space, which I also find it really interesting that you found a way to get sports back into your world and what you've done. And then to the seat you have today as Vice President of New Business North America for YouGov. And folks, that is I will let Chris do the honors, but it is very much a research company. So we're going to talk a lot about that today, but I would love for you to share with us, like, talk about that evolution, like what there's a strain of connectivity there, but those are really different roles.
Yeah, so you are correct. I did have baseball as kind of what I did in between college and professional career. But once that was done, I think more than anything, it was just by sheer dumb luck, I would say, that I got re-involved in sports. I mean, while I love sports and sports is always a part of who I was, it wasn't my everything. So it was like, when you talk about transitions, going from being an athlete into like what's next and what do I become in the real world, because it is really much the real world versus this weird kind of life that you live as an athlete. It wasn't as difficult as it had been for some people that I saw. And I always thought of myself as someone that was good at sport, at baseball, but it wasn't who I was, which was, I think, the lucky ace in the sleeve for me, is that I didn't have that as like, well, who am I now? It was like, well, that didn't work out. Time to go on to the next thing. So, yeah, I mean, honestly, if someone would have told me back at age 20, like, hey, you're going to be in business development in some capacity here 20 years down the road, I'd be like, no way. That's impossible. That's not me. So I would say, like, what was always just a constant for me, whether it was school, whether it was sports, whether now occupationally work, it was this just wanting to win was always there, and wanting to win. But the thing that made me go the route of business development, as I was having discussions with my brother, who's been a lifelong mentor for me, and it was a scenario where he's like, well, what is it that you like doing, like down to your core? What makes you tick as a person? And I was like, because at the time I wanted to be a professor. And he's like, what is it you like doing? And I was like, I just like getting to know people genuinely at their core. Like, what is it that makes people tick? And he's like, dude, you can do that in so many ways in addition to being, into education. Yeah. So that was kind of how I made that turn, I guess you could say.
Got it. And so I'm glad you talked about that, because I was going to ask you about, as you made these pretty big shifts, and even as you left, sport and playing for baseball, like, did you have any identity crises? And that's so great to hear. I love when you talk about that you didn't actually sort of overlap your identity with the role that you are playing. And it's such a trap that, you know, admittedly, I've talked about it here before. What I had done so many times where I would be like, oh, hi, I'm Shauna and I work for the NBA. I'm Shauna. And then I realized when I changed roles that all of a sudden I had set myself out to be like, I'm Shauna and and I didn't have that. And so, you know, it can really hit you in the face. So do you know why? Like, was that a conscious thing? Was there anything that helped you to do that?
I think, and once again, this could have been just the luck of not being like, for me, I'm not a huge physically gifted person as far as like this just amazing athlete. It was something that I had to put brain power in to be good at. Like I was only where I was because I was smart enough to be, and I don't mean that in terms of like book smarts, but like just learning how to do it, you know, like getting so detail oriented with how I did things and meticulous how I did things that allowed me to be in a position to accept winning. I wouldn't call like it was me willing winning. It was more like I was in the right place at the right time all the time because I did the pre-work to get there. And so I think understanding that about myself early on really helped in the ability to understand that, okay, and no matter what I do, I'm going to have this ability to put in the extra work. And I think that was a big component for me, is that I knew that it wasn't something where I was like, I was gifted with this. It was like, this is something that I can take and tailor into anything I do. So that was a big piece of it, is just understanding it. But what really takes you from being good to great for me is understanding the process of either that industry or that business or whatever it is that you're working in. And what I realized, especially now being in you know, for over a decade now in this space, is that you really have to love the way that the business is conducted. Because I've gone to other places along the way and taken that same, you know, regimen of hard work with me every place I go, but it's not the same everywhere. Like things are done differently at places. And sometimes you find yourself in a position after a couple of years where you're like, you know what, this isn't the right place for me.
Yeah, that's important. And I think what's important in that, what you just said about the times when you realize this isn't the right place for me, that bravery to take a different move, that, you know, and to go into that new unknown. But I love how you say, like, what you count on most is that you know that you can put in the work, you know, you believe in yourself, and that you see that value in yourself to be it. I bet that helps you, or has helped you in the past, to be like, okay, I know I can rely on that to go, like, take the next step in my evolution, which is pretty cool. And like I said, it's been an Achilles heel to a lot of us. So thank you so much for sharing that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think one of the things I'll add to that too is that the other side of the coin with that is that, like, sometimes you realize that you're not suited for something.
Oh yeah.
And I think that self-realization, or just that self-awareness early on, is really key too, because there's a lot of times where there's a difference between thinking I can do anything and thinking like I can do something that's right for, you know, me and how I do things in my current situation, because it's going to change all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. That's all. So much about that evolution is that self-awareness, because it's also like, I know I talk about this all the time, but like, that's also where the impact stuff comes into play, because when you're in your best, when you're operating, you know, at the place where you can really stand in your strength, then that's when you're also maximizing your impact for the people around you. So yeah.
Totally.
Definitely. So now that we've heard a bit about your evolution, tell us a bit about YouGov and what are, you know, I've watched you over the last several years, like the company really evolve and your role evolve there. So tell us about what are you doing and what are the services that you're providing for your clients?
Yeah. So, I mean, I'll try to make it concise. The quick version is I came over to to YouGov to help build out the sports practice that had started a few years back here in the States, had been around since 2010 in the UK. But at the time was very new to the marketplace out here. It was predominantly serving sports leagues, teams, sports-based agencies, and obviously how we've, you know, continued to stay in contact over the past few years. But it was really providing data and analytics that is in real time and allows people to make very quick decisions with a high level of accuracy. And that was a component that we saw missing in the marketplace. So came out, helped build out that practice, was in here for about a year. And the opportunity, you know, just by chance coinciding with the pandemic, presented itself to move to a little bit of a more expanded role with the primary business. So in addition to working with sports-based entities and rights holders and sponsorships, moving into a space that was more global in terms of providing just our full capabilities and services across everything we do. So I now, and it's been a huge learning curve over the last year plus, is going from a place of operating as let's call it an army of one, into having 19 people that report to me now. And I couldn't explain the exponential, X it is in terms of the amount of workload. It is now dealing with other people and trying to, and you lose a little bit of yourself in that, because you feel everyone's stress, you feel everyone's, everyone's duties. So you have to find out the best way efficiently to be able to spread yourself across an entire team and make sure that everyone's happy. And it's an incredibly rewarding, but it's a very, I'd say stressful. It's being able to keep yourself while also helping everybody else, and having that fine line between getting too involved in what they're feeling and also help them out so that you can be that for them.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, what you're describing to me as I hear it is like very much servant leadership, where, you're playing in that role, you're making sure you're delivering, but it's also like you need to know what makes each person tick and help each person, move themselves forward and the people that report into them. So, I was like, what do you think has been some of the biggest shifts in the way that you're thinking about, whether it's like operating your days or even, because you had this role for a bit now. So like, what do you think has been some of the shift in how you're operating from when you first stepped into it to how you're operating now?
Yeah, I think the organization of my day is something that I was never really rigid with or formalized with prior. That's been a huge saver for me. The biggest reason being that for, I'd say, the first like 6 to 9 months that I was in the role, it was like burning yourself, to your very smallest wick possible every single day, and you're into the wee hours of the night. And while you're still working long hours, you have to be able to carve out time for you to get your job done.
Mm-hmm.
Because you can talk with people all day long, you can talk with different components of your business, but unless you have, let's call it 2 hours a day where you can say, okay, I'm going to get all the stuff done that I said I was going to get done, talking to everybody on my team and everybody internally, it's near impossible to be effective. So I realized after about 6 or 9 months that it was like, you need to make time for you to do your job, as opposed to just being always on, always available for everybody at any time.
That's so true. Two things come to mind with that. And one is, I read something along the way about people who just operate in reaction to their inbox. And when they was said, I was like, oh, wait a second, I need to make sure I'm not doing that. So it is that time. And then I was recently, usually there's some sort of mountain biking in some story I tell, but I was recently on a chairlift at Downhill Mountain Park, and this random guy was sitting next to me, and he started talking about work, and he's like, I don't know if you know about deep work. And I was like, I don't know about this. So I did some Googling. There's this whole thing about deep work where you basically have a certain amount of time that you carve out a day so that you can really work deeply and get the things you need to done. And so I've started doing it for myself, where I'm like, I carve out a certain amount of time on my calendar every day, and I literally call it deep work. Where I'm like, okay,
mine just says busy, but that's exactly what I do. I didn't even know it was called that, but
yeah,
I'm glad somebody thought about it before I did, because yeah, it was more
books written about it. I was like, oh, okay, I'm gonna hop on this bandwagon. But it is really true. You like that a bit of like controlling what you can control, and carving out that time. Again, it goes back to what we were talking about earlier. As servant leadership is about like, you got to take care of yourself, take care of things that you need to fill up your cup so that you can fill it up for other people. Because when you're operating from an empty cup all day, you're just fried. So that's a great share. So in our remaining time, I want to do a little bit of a rabbit hole on research, the role of it, the impact of it. I used to operate at a place where it was not part of, like, research was Googling. And so, and unfortunately I wasn't able to get you involved with us at that time. But it is just so important. And I think about, like really informing the work people are doing. So, but in the time we have left, I'd love for you to share like role and impact, who, when, where should it be used? And then any like big trends, like the real notable stuff that you're seeing. I would love to hear about that.
Yeah, it's a big topic, but
I know.
I'll touch on the surface as much as I can. I think I'll start personally, anecdotally with me. One is I realized throughout the various roles that I've had that I do much better living in the concrete. And what I mean by that is if I'm asked to, I guess, provide a unique selling proposition or deliver the message of quality or why someone should be investing in something I have, it's a lot easier for me to do that. And sorry if you hear kids in the background yelling. It's a lot easier for me to do that if I know that it's based in truth. And what I realize is that the reason I do feel that way, if I try selling something that I think is like fluff or advocating for something that I think is not based in anything evidence-based, it's because I don't necessarily believe that it is what I say it is. And that sounds a little bit, kind of out in the ether there, but it's, for me, the value and the love for the data and analytics side of things was that you can't fake it. The data is what it is. And when people have great ideas and they don't found it in some form of research or evidence-based, that's all it is they're great ideas. And all of us have great ideas that are formulated off what we've experienced, where we come from, what makes us us. They aren't necessarily the things that make everyone else who they are. So there's a lot of assumptions that get made, especially in the media world and agency world, where it's like, oh, we should do this, we should do that. And I'm sure you've had it many times, Shauna, where you guys come up with this platform that sounds amazing, and you put it out in the marketplace and it just falls flat. And you're like, wow, how did that fall flat? Well, it's because while let's say that the 8 to 10 people that were in that space making that decision to make it happen are incredibly talented people with awesome experiences, they are 10 people with awesome experiences. So introducing a level of quantitative evidence-based research into what you do when you're making decisions, even if it's just CYA and it's like, hey, let's check the box and make sure this awesome hunch we have is not just a hunch. It pays for itself over and over and over again, because it at least says, okay, the data tells us what we should be doing is correct. So I think that would be the way I carved that out, is like just that little bit of floor to set in terms of like, how bad could this potentially be? Well, the data says that it's a good idea. So let's start there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can tell you, I know that I haven't been able to work with you in a big formal capacity, but I know that you were incredibly supportive when I went through a time where my main job was doing consulting with SLG Impact. And I had a client that you were so kind to provide some of that information for me. And it made such a difference in the work. It really informed what we were doing. We felt so confident about it, and we're able to deliver that to our client at the time. And so, I can say firsthand from working with you, the impact that it has both on me and the brand I was working for at the time. So that's awesome. Thank you so much. So tell us, is there there's so much that so many trends you could talk about. And folks, you really should follow Chris, because he shares awesome stuff on LinkedIn. You shared something earlier today. Like, there's always stuff. I'm like tagging all these people, sending it to people. So is there anything or a couple things that you want to talk about are like really standing out to you as far as trends or just things that you're seeing in consumers and brands?
Yeah, I think the things I would point to are just, I guess, how sophisticated the ability to track specific audiences across, multi-channel, devices and everything where people are consuming information is getting that much stronger. Now, obviously, what's happening with cookies is going to be interesting to see how that impacts the way people are collecting information about consumers. Some of the things that we're doing at YouGov, we are providing opt-in abilities for panelists that we have to allow us to track like purchases online and track what's going on with Chrome browsers. So that type of stuff is cutting edge for us, in that it's allowing us with the ability to talk with some of the biggest companies in the world about, how are people, what are people's, what's the life cycle like, or the purchase journey in terms of subscribing to certain products that you have or certain services that you have. Whereas they may have only seen from the time someone subscribes to when they unsubscribe to a specific service. We're now allowing them to see, what are these people doing beforehand? What are they doing after? What are some of the, I guess, micro trends as it pertains to, as they move along something like a Chrome browser. So there's a lot of that type of stuff that's very, very, very interesting. I think the marrying of different data sets from disparate vendors is really, really cool. A lot of what we do internally, as well as what a lot of our clients will do, is running information through Tableau and seeing how they can overlay information on top of each other. So I think the more and more congruent that I guess vendors get in their ability to share data and have it all work in a big cohesive kind of a marriage of data is really, really interesting, and people are getting smarter and smarter. And I think the bar has been set a lot higher here in the last 5 to 10 years to where it was before. So I'm just really excited about how easy it's going to become, especially in the next 5 years, in terms of having multiple streams of data flowing into one platform that allows people to gain insights very, very quickly without having to do too much of the digging themselves.
Wow. That's awesome. So powerful, I think, in fueling the work people do, again, from a place of insight, and something that, I don't know who I was talking to recently, we were just talking about that, that there are a lot of brands that will make the mistake of, like you were saying earlier, falling in love with an idea, but again, is it consumer centric? Is it really creating that value proposition that, for the consumer? And so best place to do is start with some research to know why you're doing what you're doing. So it's been awesome. Thank you so much for taking the time to come on, for sharing as much as you did, and for truly, from the first time I met you, being that just steady, authentic friend and guide, and for the generosity that you've shared with me over the years. So much more to come. And if people want to get in touch with you or get more information on YouGov, what's the best place to do that?
They can always ask you for my number if they need
Yes.
it. But no, I think my email is always great, chris.todd@yougov.com. A good way, or just hit me up via LinkedIn.
Okay.
That's an easy one too.
Okay, awesome. And definitely follow him on LinkedIn, folks. All right. Thank you so much, Chris. Have a great day.
All right. Talk to you later, Shauna.